Hello and welcome to Set Talks, the podcast that helps you navigate and connect with the Denver film scene. I'm your host, Nick Fiorella, and today's guest is Danielle Piscatelli. She's a local filmmaker, and she's done the 48 10 times, which I think I'm in around the same boat. I'm from Cleveland. I did it a few times there, and I've actually only done it once here. So I did it a bunch in Cleveland and then one time here. But a lot of experience with the 48, which is what we want to talk about today. Giving people advice about the 48 is essentially the theme of today's podcast. So how are you doing, Danielle?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And 10 times.
Yeah.
Okay. So where did you do it? You said it was out of state, and then you've done it a couple times here in Denver. So tell me about that to start with.
Yeah, I did it. I've done it 4 times here in Denver, and I've been in Denver since 2016, so it's been 4 times in the 8 years that I've lived here. Nice. And I did it 5 or 6 back in Boston, where I'm originally from. So I started my 48 career back there.
Nice. Any major differences, I guess, as far as like the culture of the 48 there versus here?
Well, I would say yes, in part, but it was also, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, I think I've probably noticed the biggest differences.
Sure.
I might argue that when I first started doing it, there were a lot more teams in Boston. They did their screenings over 3 days because there were so many teams. I think there were almost 100 teams the first year I did it.
Oh my God.
And the numbers stayed that way. It was pretty much that level. But obviously that was pre-pandemic, and I feel like a lot of things have changed since then. I don't know what the numbers are now, and I don't know what the numbers are since I left New England, but
yeah, cool. What was your filmmaking experience going into the 48 hour, like the first time you did it versus now, and what have you learned along the way through doing it that has made you a better filmmaker?
My initial experience was absolutely nothing. I had absolutely no film experience when I did my first 48. And so obviously I feel like I have a ton of film experience now compared to then, but I still have a lot of experience to learn. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, it's not like you have to have any filmmaking experience.
No.
And even equipment-wise, it's like you could shoot something on a cell phone if possible. But
yeah.
So for those that don't know, can you walk me through what the 48 is and what the elements are and that sort of thing?
Yeah, whenever I describe it to people, I say it's a contest. It's a film contest. It starts on a Friday night at 7 p.m. It ends on a Sunday night at 7 p.m. And within that time frame, every team is given a line of dialogue. It's always the same line of dialogue. Every team is given a character with a name and or sometimes an occupation. And every team is given a prop. And those are all the same for every team. And then every team is given 2 genres, and they either, and that they pull out of a hat, and they could either do one or the other or a combination of both genres. And so you have from 7 p.m. until 7 p.m., 48 hours, to write, cast, direct, film, edit, and produce a short film. It has to be between 4 to 7 minutes, excluding credits.
Which is overwhelming just hearing that. Which we had Ilya, who's the 48-hour producer for Denver, on, and he was saying, if you can do a 48, you can do anything.
Yeah.
Which I agree with that.
I would agree.
Such a good learning experience for deadlines and thinking on your feet and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have a particular 48-hour team name that you've stuck with? Are you typically like the director and like the team lead?
So when I first started, I was not. Both in New England, I worked with one team. In Boston, the entire time. And when I first moved here, I worked with one team the first 2 times. And my 3rd time here, it was the type of thing where I knew a couple people who had done it in the past, and were like, do you want to do it? Do you want to do it? Well, we don't have a team. And I was like, you know what? I'll create a team. So the last 2 times I've done it, I've used my team name, which is Little Red Tent Films.
Nice.
So that's the one that I use. And That's what I've done the last 2 times.
That's cool. What are some of the roles that you've done on your 48-hour team?
So I've mostly been directing. I've mostly just directed, especially when I was in Boston. That's what I did. I only directed. Sometimes produced, did a little bit of production, but it was mostly directing. When I was here, the first 2 times I did a couple of different roles just because I wanted to get on a team. So, one role I was an assistant director, and one role I helped with, I might have been a PA, and just helped with everything I could. But the last 2 times I've done it with my own team, I've produced and directed it.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you talk about like pre-production? I think that's a big one, that is certainly something I would encourage anyone going into the 48 to get out ahead of. You could just wing it and whatnot and work with what you have, but approaching it from having certain like locations like pre-prepared and having a set of actors and an editor and a cinematographer or a writer if you're having someone write it. Can you talk about that? What is your approach to getting ready for the actual 48-hour period?
Yeah, last year, so I did the 48 last year in 2023, and I really made a point of being the most prepared than I had been ever.
Nice.
And some of it was I was very specific with I wanted crew and I wanted cast, and I wanted those people to be separate. A lot of the times I've had cast also do crew work.
Sure.
I mean, it's 48, people do whatever. But I wanted people to really focus on their roles and be able to do their roles. So I had a pretty big team last year because I found people for everything. I was like, you want to do it? Let's put a role for you.
Sure.
And things like, I think as much pre-production as you can do as possible is really beneficial.
Right.
Not just assigning roles, but testing your camera, testing your equipment, knowing like your sound, having your actors read a couple of scripts together so that you can get a sense of how they act before you throw them into a scene or into a film, and having your writer draft something, hey, here's some of the other elements that have happened in the past. Can you write something in half an hour?
Right.
Like all of those things you can do ahead of time. And surprisingly, a lot of it helps. It's a little stressful. It's asking a lot of people who are doing this for their, for volunteering, because you don't get paid
Sure.
For the 48. But for people that really want to hone their craft, I think it really can do a lot for them.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah. Can you talk about the networking aspect of building a team? And I think the 48-hour, typically the producer will have like networking events and that sort of thing. But like, do you have any advice on that front as far as reaching out to people and, coordinating a team, and then, what would be things for people to look out for, whether it's like social media, like jumping on like Facebook to try to find some of these events that the 48 puts on?
Yeah, finding a team, I think, is probably one of the hardest parts of the whole process. I mean, people would say that the weekend is, but once you come to the weekend, I think everyone pitches in and does whatever they can. But I think finding a team that you can work with well is probably the hardest. When I did the 48 back east, it was a whole bunch of friends, and it was friends, and let's find this friend. Mm-hmm. The 48 itself, at that time, had at least in the Boston one, had specific networking events where people would go and meet, and you could sign up on that specific website, that city's website.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you could find team members or people that really wanted to be a part of a team. You could network that way. And when I first moved here to Denver, that was how I got involved in the team that I was in. And luckily for me, I remained friends with one of the people that I met on that first project. She is an actor, and so she's had some networking. And so the last couple of times I've done it, just because she and I have remained friends, it's been one of these, hey, who do you know? Hey, how can we network? Hey, how can we do this? So I did the project last year, but I hadn't done it, I think the last time I did it prior to that might have been 2019. And that's 4 years. That's a good length of time, and people move away and people find other things to do. And so all of the networks, all the people that I knew when I had done it in 2019 were just no longer involved either in film or didn't live here in Denver. And so I just put it out there on Facebook, and I just put it out there on Facebook. I just sent a bunch of posts, and this one networked with this one, and this one contacted me, and this one contacted me, and then it was, who do you know? And people, it just spiderwebbed from there.
Sure.
And that's how I pulled my team last year. But I would say that I got probably 6 people just from the posts that I did through Facebook groups.
I was going to say Facebook seems, even though like, I guess people are saying like Facebook's like old or something like that. But they still, I feel like, use Facebook for the 48 as far as like, like posting stuff on the Facebook page and like events and stuff. And
yeah, so I'm connected to a number of different film groups on Facebook.
Okay.
And that's how I posted. So it was less the 48 specific page. It was more all the different film community. The film community in Denver, I think is pretty big, and there are a lot of people who still use those groups to communicate and get information. And so I posted probably between like 3 or 4 different groups to get the team that I got.
Nice. Okay. Can you talk about like your typical? I'm sure it's different each time because it's a 48, and shit happens. So like, but talking about the production process, starting from pulling that genre and getting the elements all the way to turning in the film, like, has it been a situation in the past where it's like you're writing that script until 3 a.m., on that Friday night, and then shooting the next day, has that ever gone over into Sunday? Like, just tell me about like the timeline of production that has, that you've kind of had throughout some of your experience with doing the 48.
I would say that it's definitely varied depending whether I was here or whether I was back east. But pretty much my entire experience is Saturday is all filming. Saturday's always been the filming day. Sunday's always been the editing and post-production process. And Friday's been all the pre-production. So I don't think in any of the times that I've done it, I've ever done any filming on Friday. And I don't think any of the filming has ever creeped into Sunday. So, and that has worked. Obviously, there's other ways to do it.
No, I mean, that would be ideal, right? I've had to go back on a Sunday just to get a couple pickup shots and stuff and then throw them in the edit real quick just because, as we started editing, we needed it. And it was like, okay, let's hurry up like Sunday morning while somebody is still working on the edit or doing like, we just like had a blank space for the shot we needed while somebody was like working on the music or some effects or something. But I've heard horror stories of people going into real late, like Saturday night, like until like 4 a.m. and stuff, and then quickly editing it on Sunday. And yeah.
And I've never done anything where we've had scenes at night so that we've needed to do any night scenes. Like all of our scenes have either been indoors or daytime stuff. So that's just the way that we wrote the script.
Sure. What is your opinion on kind of wearing dual hats, which I have kind of tried to get myself away from doing everything. Like the first time I did it, well, the first couple times, probably 4 or 5, it was just me, my brother, and the actors. So we were doing everything. And, after a long shooting day, when you sit down to go edit, it's just like, oh my God. And, I've always kind of since then tried to even have like an assistant editor at least where we're passing footage off during the day. Do you have any kind of process corners, to be cut advice for people that you've kind of landed on through your experience?
I've had so many times where people have worn more than one hat. I think the things that I've learned is I'd rather have the actors act. That is one thing that I've definitely learned. I've had experiences where an actor has been a writer and then they write a script for them and they don't write a script for the project. And those are two different things, right? And I understand this is their craft. This is what they want to do. But you're writing for the contest, for the group as a whole. You're not writing so that you have this enormous part that shines you and only you, especially if you have more than 2 actors, right?
Sure, sure.
So I've learned that I think that is really important. The other thing I think is really important is having as many PAs as you possibly can.
Sure.
They're always the hardest to find, somebody to just PA, because I think they feel like, oh, I'm just a PA. But really, they are one of the most important people on set.
Totally.
Because they can do anything, especially those who are flexible to do anything. And last year I had 4 PAs, and I think I only had 1 who actually just did PA work the entire time. They did everything. Like, they did sound, they did catering, they did set design, they did makeup, they did costumes. Like, they did they just moved into so many different roles. And I think you need people to do that. And to me, those are the people that can wear those multiple hats. Not the person who's editing. The person who's editing should be editing. The person who's filming should be filming. Like, that's where I think the multiple hats comes in. So I know that there's a lot of people out there who will write, direct, produce, and star in it. And I feel like that's a lot.
Oh my! I can't imagine also acting in it. Like, I've definitely done that, where it's like I've written it, directed it, edited it, and shot, which, it's too much.
It is too much.
You sleep for like 2 to 3 hours a night, essentially.
If that.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like the 48 is this collaborative process, and it's a collaborative project. And the things that I've learned so much from other people, and I can't imagine being the person who wears all of the big hats, all of the above the line hats, right? And then it's all about me and what I want, and it's not collaborative anymore.
Sure. Can you talk about that, which like basically the vibe and whatnot that you set on set, especially if you're directing. I think that's important as a leader. You're kind of setting the expectations of, even if it's just, this is going to be fun, this is going to be collaborative, but if we're under time constraints or there's a technical issue, we need to move on or whatever. Like, what do you have kind of an approach to leading your team? Because certainly I've heard horror stories on 48s where just things can fall apart. And I think, establishing a certain vibe of creativity or collaboration or whatever it is super important. And even just something as simple as like having food like on set contributes to what I'm talking about. And I take it super seriously, like the food.
Yeah.
Because it's like everyone's doing it for free. So it's like, being considerate of those things, I think, is important to setting a good vibe. So like, can you talk about that? How do you have that conversation with your crew and keep a certain level of authority over a certain vibe that you want to set?
So the first project I did, so I'll go back and because I think this explains how I ran the crew last year, how I ran the project last year, but which I do think was run really well. But the first time, it was a bunch of us who were all friends, right? So we knew each other, we were all friends with each other, and we knew this was going to be, a long process. None of us really knew what we were doing. But we were just having fun. So there was a lot of laughter. There was just a lot of community that was built around it. And I think that the team that won that first year, they did the 48, and then they also had this behind the scenes filming, like a little documentary that they submitted. They just did it on YouTube online afterwards.
Oh, that's cool.
And I remember watching that after they had won, so after the whole process, and I watched that little YouTube, and I think it was about 20 minutes long, and they went through how they'd been doing it for, at that point they'd done it like 6 times or something, and they went through all the different things that they learned and how they did their processing and what was important and what they found was valuable and things like that. And I remember watching it and thinking, oh, we did so much wrong, like, in our first year. And so I think I've always been trying to strive for some of the tips that they mentioned.
Sure.
To have the weekend, yes, it's busy, yes, it's fast, but to just still have people have a good time, and not have fights on set, and not have
Right.
drama on set, and everything that can happen. And it's hard. It really is hard.
No, for sure. It's like a delicate balance. You don't want to. I've had bad experiences on films where it's because I kind of am like, can't we all just get along? Like,
Yeah.
this is supposed to be fun. It's making a film, but if you set a precedent of like, I just want this to be collaborative and whatever we all think is great. Sometimes that can backfire where it's like, it turns into like people jumping in and trying to take over, or thinking that maybe, I don't know, that you're not a good leader or something if you don't have a good vision or something like that, if it's too loose.
Right.
So like, but then there's the opposite of that where it's so like, this is my vision and there's like a pretentious vibe that it kills the creativity a little bit and some of the lightning bolt moments that you might have if you were having fun and setting a good vibe. So I don't know. I mean, it's a hard balance to walk of management, really.
Yeah.
But also keeping it fun and creative. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think for me, it's always been going in with a plan, but I'm totally willing to change it in the moment if someone, I don't care where the good idea comes from. Like, I definitely want people to contribute, but having no plan can, backfire too. So I don't know. Yeah.
You get people that want to, that want to help out. You also get people that, as a director, I've had other people say, okay, that was the shot. And I've turned to them and say, was it? Really?
Right.
Was that the shot that I wanted? I didn't think that was the shot that I wanted. Like, and so, and that is where people want to help out and they want to be creative. But there's also people that are like, come on, we got to go. They're looking at their watch and they're getting panicky. And then you have people that say, well, I only can be here for 2 hours on Saturday. And you're like, well, then why are you here? Like,
Sure.
So there's tons of stories, and I'm sure every team has stories like that.
Right.
The way I ran it last year, so I knew early on that I was going to do the project probably sometime in May or beginning of June. And I started the networking, and I kind of in my brain said, okay, the weekend is these 3 days, and I want to have a cast and crew meeting the Sunday before to go over everything. Like, that was our pre-production meeting, and I felt that was super important. And
Totally.
then in between then, I was going to have the actors read. I was going to have them read with the writer, and
Like Friday, you mean? Like
no,
after
like
the
in
script's
the
written?
middle of the week.
Just
some
kind
random-
of pick something and let's all go through it. Just as an exercise. That's a good idea.
As an exercise, because I only knew one of the actors, and I wanted to hear how they communicated with each other, and I wanted to get a sense of what type of parts they could read.
Sure.
And we had our DP there, and I wanted him there so that he could, figure out filming, lighting, just all these different things that I think you don't really have time to do.
Sure.
And some of that stuff I'd always done like either Friday night or Saturday morning, which obviously takes time.
Right.
But having the pre-production meeting on the Sunday before really hashed out quite a few kinks. One of the big ones was what equipment we were going to use and who had what equipment. Because for me, I'm a director and a producer. I don't have film equipment. And I don't have my own. And people who do the filming and the directing usually have their own equipment, and they're really particular, and they know what they want for editing. And so, hashing out all those details, I think really worked well. And it wasn't a 5-minute meeting, but it was a good 2-3 hours. And
Sure.
then everyone got to meet each other.
I was going to bring that up. I think even just getting people together is important so that
Right.
it's not cold on that Friday, because that can eliminate some potential egos, going up against each other. If people are a little more comfortable with the people that they're going to be making it with, if you're just showing up on the day and everyone's nervous and trying to do their thing, sometimes it can,
Yeah.
be a little, not a certain people butting heads that don't want to back down. But if they kind of know each other a little bit, then going into it, you can kind of avoid some of those little drama moments.
Yeah. So people got to meet each other. They got to learn each other's experiences. They got to just get a good sense of, I think, what I was looking for with the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to be open about it.
Yep.
I'd like to believe I was. I think you'd have to ask some of them
Sure.
how I did. But I mean, in general, I definitely like collaboration, but I'm also the type of person that when push comes to shove, I'm making the decisions.
Yeah.
So thank you for your opinion, but I'm still making the end decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. It works for me. May not work for everybody, but it works for me.
I mean, I think you need that. Otherwise, time's running out and we don't have time to talk through this,
No.
which I've had some experiences on 48s where it's like in the middle of shooting, someone was like, I don't know if this makes sense. And we're going to all sit down and stop filming to talk through it. And my brother and I were just like, we gave it probably like a half hour or so. And then it was like, I'm sorry, but the script's written. We think this is going to work well. We got to move on.
Yeah.
And it did end up working really well. And the audience got it and whatnot. But yeah. Yeah, you kind of have to have somebody saying, nope, we're running out of time. We got to go with this. That's it,
Yeah.
Do you have any particular like best moments that whether it's like something that really came together, any kind of magic moments on set or just really in general came together with a certain idea that really came together in the edit? Any particular moments from past 48s that
Magic moments. I mean, I think finishing the film is always a magic moment.
Sure,
and if
totally.
you finish the film
On time. Mm-hmm.
like that relief is huge.
Absolutely.
Last year was the first time that I used a real composer. Most of the times before that, we've used the free music that's online.
Yep.
So last year was the first time I used a composer, and I actually think that made a huge difference.
Really? I've always
in the
kind of shied away from that. Just based on like having them score it, like it's like if I could just pull it offline, which is probably like people are probably going, "Oh my god, really?" Like you don't want to have a score, but it's just one less thing to think about, and I'd rather just kind of pick something offline in the edit. But like, yeah, tell me about that experience. Like leading into, like, did you have to have a finished edit to present to them, or were you like coming up with like even during filming like themes for certain characters, like to get out ahead of putting the score together? Like what was the approach to working with a composer in the 48-hour period?
Well, it was interesting. This was I didn't think about music. Like that's one of the things that you're in the editing, you're like, what's missing? Oh, music. Oh, that's what's missing. To me, it's an afterthought that should not be an afterthought. And that's probably one of the things I've learned is you need to think about your sound, and not just the sound on set, but like a sound editor, and you need to think about music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this was somebody who last year one of the other team members pulled in. And so I had met the composer ahead of time, and he came to our pre-production meeting, and he came to the Friday night session. So we had done a lot of script work and had an idea. I mean, we had the script before we all left on Friday, and so he had the script. The final script got emailed out at some time throughout the night.
Right.
So he had it Saturday morning, and he actually stayed home because all of his stuff was at home.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, he showed up sometime midday just to say hi and see how the filming was going, and then went back home and kind of finished sort of the score. But when he showed up on Saturday, he had a template. It was like, this is what I'm thinking of. He had the script, he had the template, he understood what the mode of the film was, kind of how it was feeling.
Sure.
And then on Sunday, me and the editor went to his house, finished the edits there, and because he had all of his equipment there, we were able to download the film. We sent him a rough draft, which was longer than the film needed to be, at some point in the afternoon. And then he was able to really finalize the score while we were finalizing the edit and then pull it all together. So it does add a layer, but it's also, I'd like to give kudos to people who do composition. You know, they should be able to see a script or see a draft and get a feel for what the film is going to be like, so they can get a draft themselves. And that draft, they don't have to do it on Sunday after the film's complete, right? They could be creative on Saturday. They could be creative
Right.
Sunday morning while you're still doing your edits. And at least, and I do think it made a difference, because I think
sure.
the film that we did last year, it was good, but the score really made it. The score really gave the warmth and really gave the tone of the film that we were looking for.
No, that's cool. And the timing of it too, sending them the script and having them already starting to work on kind of a vibe for the scenes or whatever, just to get out ahead of it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any like worst moments that probably turned out to be like some of the best learning experiences and whatnot that you've had on the 48?
Definitely, I would say last year our DP walked out.
Really?
Yeah, at
Okay.
lunchtime. Our DP just walked off set. And none of us knew our DP walked off set. So we took a break for lunch, and we're like, where's so-and-so? Where's so-and-so? We're like looking around, and we were looking around for about an hour, and we could not find him. And finally, my AD, the editor, we're like, we gotta start filming. Like, we gotta get this going. And eventually he texted me back and was like, yeah, not happening.
Oh no. That's wild, especially during it. I think the worst I've ever had anything like that is the actors bailed the night before.
Yeah.
Where they were like, hey, I'm and it's like, yeah, but we talked about, we've been going over this for the past couple of weeks. And then I had to have 3 like friends step in, and the film we made turned out to be pretty good and it worked out. But like, yeah, like the 3 actors that we had all bailed the night before. And it was just like, which that's another one. I try to get people to commit for the day. It's like, if you can only be there for a certain amount of time, then maybe,
that's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that I think was probably the worst one. I also had an experience where, this is a 7-minute film. It's really short. Most parts are big parts in a 7-minute film, right?
Sure.
It's not like you have these huge leads and these really small supporting, and you can have a number of extras. But I've also had a time where we had 4 actors and the writers wrote 5 parts. Mm-hmm. And their comment was, well, they're only in 3 scenes. I'm like, there's only 5 scenes in the film. Like, that's a big part. And we didn't have a 5th actor. And we had somebody who was one of the crew and showed up on set. She's like, well, I guess I'll do it. And I was like, but you don't know how to act. And it was, to me, it was very obvious. And so I've had that happen. And you're like, why would you write 5 parts when you have 4 actors? Like,
right.
That's not as bad as the DP walking out. I think the DP takes the cake right now.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be rough. That's a big component. Yeah. Can you talk about that? Because you said that you typically you just focus on directing. Like, what's your process like with your writer? Do you guys, you get all the elements and then sit down and kind of talk through it, but then you kind of let them take the time to go and write it, and then you kind of look at the first draft? Or
when I wasn't the team lead, and I didn't, back east, when I was more just a director, we did the writing process all these different ways. And again, I wasn't team lead and I wasn't overall producing, and so I sort of took that step back. I always felt it was important for me as a director to be around the writing process, because
Sure.
I wanted to, I didn't have to contribute, but I needed to be there so I could understand what the script was forming. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when I was back east, the writers wanted to work in a vacuum. They wanted to, nobody needed to be there while they were writing. They didn't want any cast. They didn't want any other crew. They didn't want anyone else there. They wanted the freedom to write. And I can respect the need for that, but I think you go into a different room. You don't isolate. And so I would really want to read the script and take the time to read the script and get a sense of, okay, I think this actor could do this. I think this actor could do that. Like, especially if I was just meeting, again, these are the things I learned. A lot of this was back east, right? I would only see the actors first thing on Saturday morning. I'd never met them. And so at that point, I'd want them to read the script. So we would have an early call just so I could hear them read with each other.
Right.
And if I had 2 actors, obviously 2 parts. But if I had 3 actors, I'd interchange all of those parts and let them so that I could hear them and get a sense of this one's better for this part. And sometimes writers would write specifically for the actors and say, no, this is who we envisioned for this. And I would say, but you're a writer. I'm the director. I cast. You don't.
Yeah.
And that's how that goes. So there'd be some, challenges with that. I have tried to avoid that with the teams that I did.
Sure.
And what I noticed when I came here and did the project here for the first 2 years with another team is they had everybody show up on Friday night. They had actors there, they had all the crew there, and that was a new experience for me. And that opened my eyes to say, oh, you can do a lot more if more crew is here. Because while the writer is writing, you can talk about locations, or you can talk about what you might need for props, or especially once you figure out the locations you're going to shoot, then you can start talking about set direction or set design and what you think people are going to wear and who has what and all of that. And those are things that can be done while the script is being finalized.
No, that's a good point. I've actually not done that's a real good point. I like that. I might have to use that. I've not done that in the past. It's always been like me and someone else writing the script that night. And we do kind of keep it like usually though we're directing it as well. So like, if it was a director or something, yes, they should be involved in the process, but I've kind of emailed the script out with the parts that people are going to do like when we finish the script at 2:30 in the morning or whatever it is and gone from there. But that's a really good point from a planning perspective, because usually we just show up to set and then we're gonna set dress this real quick. And I do definitely do a script read through. I think that's important. It's like a real good gut check if it's working.
Yeah.
Like, is the script gonna work?
Yeah.
Out loud. So like I definitely do that. But I like that, like little pre-production planning for the next day. Yeah. While the script's getting written. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. So I've always done a read through, and I did that back east. I did a read through last year when it was my team. And then the first time I did my own team, our script wasn't great when we went to bed, and it was basically rewritten on the fly first thing Saturday morning. And so we had a number of takes where we were finalizing, literally, they were writing stuff as they were filming because the script, it wasn't fitting the genre. It was going off track. It was, people were being creative because too many people wanted to write the script.
Right.
Which is a whole nother topic. But
well, exactly. And that's the other side of that coin, right? It's like you can't have too many people in a room, which I've done that where I helped out on a team and there was like 5 or 6 people trying to like put this idea together and write the script, and it just went round and round and round and nothing was getting done. And I was like, well, you know what? Here, like you guys should do what you think and we need to start something. Like, and it was me just helping out on a team. So I didn't really like have the authority to be like, no, we're doing this or whatever. It was just like, so that you can have too many cooks in the kitchen too, for sure.
You can. Yeah. There is a balance. I think so a couple of ways there is a balance, and everybody does it differently. And some of the balance to me is, well, where are we filming? What are our filming options? We can't write a script about a basketball game if we don't have a place to film a basketball game, right? And so some of it is where are you going to be filming and what are your options on where you're filming. And some of that will dictate the script, and sometimes you can fudge some of those places. But some of it also is what our actors like. If you only have 2 male actors, you can't write female parts. Right? So some of it is that too. And I think that it takes a conversation with the writer. So last year I very specifically only had 1 writer. And I had probably 3 other people on crew that could have helped writing. And I had learned from the previous time I'd done it, I had 3 writers. One was somebody who just wanted to be in the writing process, and one was an actor and a writer, and one was a crew member who also wrote not screenplays, but other things in life. So they had writing experience. And I remember we got like family film, and I walked in there after an hour and a half, and I was like, okay, what are you doing? And they were reading it to me, and what they had written was this apocalyptic nightmare with like the world had exploded, and then there was like not zombies, but people who had decided to like come in and start killing other people because they were in the apocalypse, and like, we need to get all of our food. And I was like, tell me where this is family friendly.
Right.
And the main character was the guy who was writing. And we had 2 female actors and a male actor. And we also had like femme fatale. And I'm like, so tell me where the femme fatale theme is, family-friendly femme fatale.
Right.
Because you're writing a screen just for you as a man, and you're making these 2 female leads be absolutely nothing in the film. And so it turned into a bit of a nightmare.
Sure.
So setting these parameters and understanding that everyone's on the same page, I think is really important.
Well, and like you said, the elements do influence, obviously, the script. So, like, even just like from a prep standpoint, if you can have different locations too, just so you have options with your story, really, you know? And, actually, that was something that we touched on, obviously, you know, you pick a genre out of a hat, but like, for those that don't know, what are some of the genres, you know, just some of the main ones, which I guess they're all pretty common, like romance or horror or whatever.
Comedy. Just like action, adventure, thriller.
Family film. Musical. Are there
Western.
Western. Are there any genres that you're, silent film, are there any particular genres that you are like, if we get that, we're not doing it, we're doing the other? Because you do get 2, you know. Yeah. Is there any like deal breaker genres for you?
Well, for a lot of people, musical is a deal breaker. And last year we got food film and musical. And I have to be honest, I really wanted to do musical. And I thought we could have done it. But our writer, he blatantly said, he's like, I don't know how to write a musical.
Right.
So I think one of the things that is really important is that you as a director and you as a writer, you have a communication, you start talking about different films that are in those genres. So you can think outside the box, right? Because you think of a musical is a chorus line, it's Chicago, but it's also something like The Producers. So you could do musical in a variety of ways.
Right.
You don't have to have people singing and dancing. You could be in a sort of a room creating a musical, and it's still a musical.
Sure.
You know, so and I think with all the genres, there's ways to think of it, and that.
To make it work, yeah. You could have just a very heavy musical presence to the sequence of the edit, and maybe that kind of works as a musical, or for whatever reason, there's a character that sings like their dialogue, you know, and there's just like, what is going on here? You know, just as a comedic approach to a workaround, but I'm with you on that though. Musical, probably not.
Western, I would have a hard time with Western.
Oh, really? Oh,
I would.
I love spaghetti westerns and stuff. So like, I would be into that, even if it's something as simple as, you know, I don't know, like a standoff in a hallway and then just filming it like a spaghetti western, you know.
Yeah, I think like the wardrobe and the set would make it. I think I would have a hard time with that, and that would make me feel like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Sure. Or even like in that regard, period piece. It's like, well, we don't have costumes for that. Like, what the hell are we going to do? Or, you know, and then, but Okay, well, it's going to be set in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
There's your period piece.
Right.
I
Period
don't know.
piece or yeah, there's so many. Horror is not a genre that I'm really good at, so I think that would be really challenging for me. Action adventure, you think of things like Die Hard as action adventure. It's like, well, I can't do any of those special effects. Like,
Sure.
It's yeah, all the genres have some challenge to them, and I think it's just about finding creative ways to do the film.
Sure. Absolutely. Can you talk about, for those that don't know, if somebody did want to set up a team, what is the process to do that? I know, like, plugging the 48-hour website, and what's the process to start your own team? And can anyone do it?
Yeah. I mean, anyone can do it as long as you're willing to be creative and shoot a film and get it in on time. Anyone can do it. I would say start by going to the 48-hour website. Click on the Denver team, and you have to register. So there's a cost to registering. And your team can be one person or your team can be 20 people. It's a matter of how many people you want. But you have to register. I think there's a lot of information about required elements, how you have to turn in your film, a lot that you can do, what you can and can't do prior to 7 p.m. on Friday, what's allowed and what's not allowed, and then everything that has to be done within that 48-hour period. There's a lot of requirements there, and I think they do a really good job at listing all of that.
For sure.
And what you need to turn in on Sunday night and how things have to be turned in. So I would say just go to the website and start there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think they have like an FAQ on there that's really solid, and
yeah,
absolutely. And just even reaching out to the producer, usually they're pretty responsive about questions and stuff. What about equipment? Do you have to have a special camera? Does it have to be like some sort of cinema camera, or even just like a DSLR, audio equipment?
No, you don't need special equipment. I mean, obviously, the better the equipment, the better film, but that really just goes to the people who are working the equipment, right? Just because you have a nice camera doesn't mean you're going to have a great film. It just means it's going to probably look nice. Could still be a crappy film.
For sure.
But the first couple of years that I did it back east, we just used a DSLR. And there's lots of places to get to rent equipment too. I mean, that's an option that you could rent equipment, and you could use the audio that comes with the camera, or you could have separate audio. I mean, there is ways to do it simply without really getting extensive. Yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah, you could shoot it with a cell phone at the end of the day, and still could be a winning film, depending on how things came together. And one thing to note, I don't know if this is typical with all rental houses, but I feel like most of them, it's this way, where it's, the weekend is considered a 1-day rental, where it's like if you pick it up on Friday and you drop it off on Monday, you're only getting charged for the 1 day. I don't know if that's every rental house.
You might get charged with 2 days if you pick it up on Friday, but a lot of times Sundays don't count. But if you have to turn it back on Monday. But, I mean, depends, yeah.
I guess it depends on the rental house.
Yeah.
But I feel like typically it's that way, but yeah, depends. Why is the 48 such a great learning experience? And how has that experience made you a better,
Filmmaker?
person? Well, just in general, because I always tell people at my work, that are freaking out about a deadline, this is not a big deal. Because the 48 almost teaches you prioritizing getting things done with the deadline.
Right.
Right? So it's I've had people having meltdowns at my work where it's no, we're good. We're good. We still have time, and this is going to get done. It's kind of, for me, it's always been the most intense deadline I've ever put on myself, is the 48. So I don't know, what are some of those things that you've learned through doing the 48 that you've kind of taken into your personal life, whether it's managing or time constraints or what have you?
I would say, I would agree with you that it's probably one of the most intense deadlines that I've been put on as well. Working in a group setting, and certainly I have my own deadlines that I put on myself, but working in a group setting, I think it's probably one of the most intense. knowing that everyone wants a good, solid product in the end. I think it's taught me to be organized, more organized than I think I need to be. I think it's also taught me to think creatively on my feet really quickly.
Right.
To accept the product.
Sure.
You know, like we all want to make it better, but you have to accept this is what it is. The deadline is now. We got what we got. Like,
right.
And to just accept what you've made, you know, and be happy with it. Well, maybe not be happy with it, but just accept it. So some of those I think are big characteristics. Working with a number of different personalities.
Yeah.
In a very short period of time, and just being respectful of the different personalities. So there's
Sure.
some of that that I've taken away from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think managing other people in a creative environment, especially where it's, you know, people can get offended if you don't use their idea or whatever it is, you know, just that management aspect, I think, is not something to just go, oh, well, it's not something to take lightly.
Right.
There are like steps that need to go into managing teams, I feel like, that are super important. And the 48 is like a crash course in managing.
Yeah.
Like a group or a crew and stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think you said it correctly when you said managing creative people.
Sure.
Because creative people are amazing, right? I don't think I could do some of the things that some of the people that I've met can do. Really. But everyone who's creative wants to be creative, right? They want their creativity to shine, and they want their creativity to be forefront. And you could have creative people who, you know, one person could have this idea A, and then you have creative person over here that's like, no, wait, then you add this, and then you get creative person B in there, and then you have creative C, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, we're so off track. And if you're not able to sort of manage that creativity, it can all get out of whack. And
Sure.
I think that's important too, is when you work in a team, it's recognizing everybody has strengths, everybody's a part of this team, and how is everybody's strengths going to shine so that the team shines. And that's probably a huge thing that I've learned through the 48. I mean, in film in general is very collaborative. It's a lot more collaborative than I think I originally realized, but it's made me realize that that's a good thing. That's a real good thing. And that's probably one of the things I've taken away, is trying to get everybody's, when I work on teams now, to really try to get everybody's thoughts and ideas so that everyone feels heard and valued and that they're a part of that team.
Absolutely. Which ultimately leads to the best work. Like
Right.
when you do kind of are cultivating the best ideas from everyone, you know.
Yeah.
If it's but you by yourself, it's like it's only, you know, going to go
all
so
about
far.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you can plan something out and then it gets elevated by the people you're around, then, you know, then
Yeah.
it's movie magic.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to close out, you know, if somebody wanted to follow your work or connect with you, you know, I know you do short films outside of the 48. What would be the best way for them to do that, as far as like Instagram or social media?
So I do have, I only have a couple of films, and they're on YouTube. It's under Little Red Tent Films.
Okay.
I do have a very generic Gmail, which is littleredtentfilms@gmail.com. I do have social media. I don't use it as much for my films. I just kind of post here and there.
Okay.
But I think those are probably the two best ways. Definitely email me. More than that would be the best way.
Cool. So
Yeah.
if there's any actors, cinematographers, any crew people that
Yeah.
want to get on one of your films, they should reach out to you.
Yeah, and I definitely want to do more films. I definitely want to do the 48 again. I mean, like we sort of said off line here, you're like, it's a love-hate relationship, and it totally is a love-hate relationship.
Right.
It's one of those things that after the film, you're like, I don't ever want to do this again. And then 4 months later, you're like, wow, we could actually do
You know,
that
we could do it.
again.
Yeah, we could do it. I
could
think
think
we could do
about
it.
it.
Yeah, you start getting optimistic. Yeah, but yeah, at the end of it, you're just completely burned out. Like,
Yeah.
I, you know, afterwards, it's always like the next day, I'm like, just like you're up until you turn the film in. I feel like your adrenaline is good, but then
Yeah.
like that night, it's like a restless, like tired but I don't know. Like I can't quite fall asleep
Yeah.
afterwards, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I think all this was very useful information. And for anyone looking to get involved in the 48, you can do it. You can do it, But cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Set Talks, the podcast that helps you navigate and connect with the Denver film scene. Bye.
Here we go.